Hi, honey. Oh my God. Such a big deal is happening, and I wanted to break down the astrology for you and really explain. If you're watching astrologers right now, you're hearing again and again that the astrology is just off the hook with the big deals that are happening. And February 20th is the exact date of one of the really big things, Saturn conjuncting Neptune. And that happens, on a regular schedule. It's not like that alone is what is the big deal, but it's the fact that it's happening at 0 degrees of Aries. Because 0 degrees of Aries is the very beginning of the zodiac. So we can think of this as a cosmic reboot for all of us people and critters on planet Earth. Saturn and Neptune are going to stay together in that exact position until Sunday afternoon, and then Saturn's going to start to pull ahead. But they're still going to be within orb or within range of exactitude. They're only going to get 3 degrees away by mid-March. Let me explain a little bit of the background so you can understand like what a big stinking deal this really is, the magnitude and scale of what we're going through right now. This has been building up since April of 2025, and it really is what is describing the turmoil that we're going through right now, that we see in the government in the US and in different governments across the world. It's like the pinnacle of toxic masculinity is in charge of the world, and that's really concerning. But we can also think of this as a time where that masculine aspect, the patriarchy, has reached its absolute zenith, and it is just holding on for dear life, kicking and screaming, not to let go of the power that it has. Are we going into a matriarchal time? I really think so. And perhaps that matriarchy, what that looks like in today's world, is not, you know, when people talk about feminism and they are afraid, I think that what sparks their fear is they're worried that women are going to start treating men the way men have been treating women for all this millennia, for thousands of years now, second class citizens and so forth. But I believe that the matriarchy that we are moving into, I'll just go ahead and call it, is going to be more about an egalitarian society where there's not this hierarchy of like rich and powerful men dictating everything to everyone underneath them. And so, and how that's symbolized is Saturn symbolizes the authority and the structure of government. And Neptune represents a lot of things, but it's all very ambiguous. What Neptune likes to do in action is to dissolve what it comes in contact with. So that means Neptune is working on dissolving the social hierarchy, the political hierarchy. That's why we're seeing things like the Epstein files and what that big cabal is all about. All these wealthy men pulling the strings behind the scenes. Well, it's getting exposed and it's going away. But first, let me give you some background so you can understand like the true magnitude of what I am talking about here. Okay? Saturn and Neptune have not met at 0 degrees of Aries at the beginning of the zodiac since Friday, March 2nd at 9:03 p.m. 4361 BCE, y'all. 6,387 years ago. And it was a big deal back then, as far as I can tell, too. I mean, we don't have the historical documents to back that up, but we do have a lot of archaeological evidence that a big shift was happening at that time. Human beings were just about to make a giant leap. You know, and from what I can see, what I've been hearing in a spiritual sense is that that was the goddess age. And there's proof of that in archaeology. We don't know, of course, what the social strata was like, but if women were not in charge, it sure looks like they were at least equal to men at that time. We can find the evidence of that in the artwork of the time. That is around the time of the goddess sculptures like the Venus of Willendorf, cave paintings, you know, those stencils where they put their hand and then sprayed paint over top. Those have been analyzed. You know, women's hands are different than men's hands, and most of the handprints on those caves are the hands of women. So, we're going from a time when human beings were hunter-gatherers and moving into agriculture. By my reckoning, this really fits in with the Bible stories of how human beings got started. Women brought knowledge, goddesses, and domesticating animals, because who do you think started domesticating animals? Was it men or women? But be that as it may, whatever you might believe about that, that started the ball rolling of this change in society. And Cain and Abel are an allegory for the hunter-gatherer versus agriculture, if you follow me. That's why they were competing, and to the death. Once we start having agriculture happen, agriculture means you've got to own land and have control of that land. And land ownership brings what? Brings war. Because I want that land. The other tribe wants that land. It's the most fertile land, or whatever it is. You know, it's nearest the resources. So that is when we started to have war. So there's no more Garden of Eden because of all that. And I've got a great idea. Let's blame women for that. So it was during that, the last time Mars and Saturn got together was during that hinge of humanity when things really changed dramatically. It's a turning of the age, but that turning of the age takes a long time. For them, they were going from the nimble hunter-gatherer Gemini age, like we're leaving the Pisces age right now and going into the Aquarian age. They were leaving Gemini age and moving into earthbound age of Taurus. And just to give you a perspective, so we're talking about the cave painting times, and 1,000 years before Stonehenge was erected. The technology of that time was like they had woven fabric, they had pottery, stone tools, and they were starting on domestication. And so we're going from that to a world of men dominating. It brought all kinds of high-tech innovations that we still enjoy today. You know, it's not entirely bad. We like having indoor plumbing now. But some of the innovations were astrology. That's around when this stuff, well, this change led to capabilities of astrology, because that is when we also started writing. Metallurgy started around that time because this is the beginning of the Bronze Age. Bull cults, bro culture, and we have, as I mentioned before, the first evidence of war happening. And to me, that is summed up with this idea that might makes right. Now, we are also at the turning of the age, and we're moving into an age of healing the trauma, the Aquarian age, the age of Aquarius, right? And we can also see that we are having lots of crazy cultural advancement right now, high tech innovations. And again, this is a cultural turning point. So, a little inside baseball, we like to look at what the planets are doing that rule the signs that the planets are in. So, we call these dispositors. What's happening in Aries? Well, we need to look at the ruler of Aries for some more information about that. And the ruler of Aries is Mars. He was in Leo, and the ruler of Leo is the Sun in Aquarius. The ruler of Aquarius is either Saturn or Uranus, and Uranus was opposed to Mars from Pisces. Pisces is ruled by Neptune, and that brings us back to Saturn conjunct Neptune at 0 degrees of Aries. So, TLDR, people being caught up in masculine drive, full of self-pride, feeling like this uniqueness that needs to be apart, like separate groups, feeling opposed and traumatized in a nebulous way, and determined to change the whole system and to defend independence and the specialness of a group. And that is the way society has been running ever since then, with these warring factions against each other. And we see that in miniature in all kinds of things, from sports to Family Feud. And today, Saturn and Neptune have been playing footsie since April of 2025. They've been getting closer to being together and retrograding, going back and forth in and out of Aries, all through all this tumult that we're having, where it just feels like we're all losing our minds. So now we are finally at this exact point of reboot about how these two opposite kind of planets interact with each other. It's a replay of that vast cultural change we underwent 6,000 years ago. We can think of Saturn and Neptune as in contrast to each other. Structure, like religion, versus spiritual experience. So somebody telling you how to be in touch with God versus the Neptunian way of connecting God, which is a direct one-on-one experience. Rules, Saturn versus nebulousness. Knowledge versus disillusionment, or like a hazy belief knowing. And Saturn is an earthly ruler, and Neptune is like this numinous God spirit. And they are meeting, as I have said, at astrological ground zero, February 20th, 6:49 a.m. Central. The effects of this conjunction are going to last at least until 2061, when Mars and Saturn get together at 20 degrees of Gemini. But I looked forward 2,500 years and I couldn't find another time when Mars and Saturn get together at zero. Saturn and Neptune get together at 0 degrees of Aries. or any 0 degrees of any sign. So, anyway, Mars, the ruler of this conjunction, is in Aquarius, which is quite different, my friends, from Mars being in Leo. Leo is me, 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 and Aquarius is about the needs of the many outweighing the needs of the few. Literally, really. Anyway, Mars is in Aquarius, and so that is flavoring everything that's happening at this conjunction, what it really symbolizes. Aquarius is ruled by Uranus, who happens to be in Taurus. This is like a flip, right? And Taurus is ruled by Venus. She is exalted in Pisces, where she is. And that is ruled by Neptune, which brings us back to. Oh! Brings us back to Aries, where Saturn and Neptune are coming together. Neptune is what we call the final dispositor, dissolving that male archetype and the structures at 0 of Aries. Mars himself is sextile to Chiron and Eris with a wide square to Uranus. TLDR, this whole setup speaks really loudly of a need to heal the trauma and a pursuit of justice. It's a crisis of belief. It's time to let go of the known world. And by the way, the wavy lines of Aquarius, that symbolizes two snakes, not like I used to think it was electricity or something, but it's two snakes going in opposite directions. And snakes symbolize transcendence, like the shedding of the skin, becoming a new snake, new way of being. So what can we expect? It's going to be perhaps very painful, but a beautiful change. We can expect changes in beliefs around hierarchy. We can expect our generational trauma to be addressed in a much more broad and supportive sense. Healing the distortion of masculinity that's really gotten distilled here recently, barbarians, from like barbarians back in the day to incels, that men that blame women because they can't get a date. It also describes alienation from emotion and feeling othered from the feminine, like women are over there and men are over here. We're not both human. Ask any woman, if you're a man, ask any woman if culturally women are treated as if they're human, and we're really not. We're really, really not. We don't have the same rights as men. We don't even have the right to our own bodies. And that's all going to change because of this rise of the feminine, or at least a rise of the feminine to equality, if not being the final bosses. So gender equality, we can look forward to acceptance of gender variety too, because it doesn't have to be all masculine all the time anymore. There's going to be a change in our values back to nurturing, kindness, community, and believing that all these things are not gay, right? And that there's nothing wrong with being gay. I look really forward to there being an acceptance of differences, race equality, and healing of all the gross inequities that are all around this domination of by white people. But before we get to all that great stuff, people in power they're not going to give up without a fight. And that's where we are right now. So we can expect to see big flailing and destruction happening. We're already seeing that. And, the ruler of the former ruler of the free world is literally losing his mind right now. And it's all on display. But he's still being propped up by this masculine domination system. So ultimately, we, the people, are going to win. We're on the verge of a brand new society and a new way of being human. And maybe we're kind of returning to the old way of being human. Yeah, so I think this is fantastic. I'm really excited. I'm glad I did that rabbit hole dive into looking at the difference between the last time this happened and now, because I think it really illustrates how big of a deal this really is. So don't lose hope. Things really are changing, and we are not going back. They're changing forever and for good. Okay? Yeah. And, if you are feeling like you need to talk to somebody or want some divination work, tarot readings, astrology, natal chart reading, so forth, you can go to my website, michellecraft.love, and book a reading. You pick the time. I have got openings in March waiting for you. I'd love to meet you. And until next time, remember, I know it's corny, but I love you, fellow human being. And the universe loves you so much more. We're going to be all right. All right.